This episode is brought to you by The Skeptical Buddha, The Tao of Science, my book, which is a thoughtful discourse on Eastern philosophy and how it helped birth ideas required for science and skepticism and the way it fell behind in the face of new evidence. This book discusses the long history of both philosophies as well as the tenets and variations within the varying sects, along with psychology and our own natural biases. It discusses how to counter our natural biases using science and the underlying concepts of meditation and mindfulness, a more complex understanding of how science operates than most of the public understands, and why it is the best tool we have to discover truth and reality, as well as philosophical ideas we might embrace as technology progresses. The material is packaged in a way that the average person can understand, with rich illustrations to draw the reader in and feel at peace. Community is a nebulous idea we all hear thrown around, but the more I analyze it, the more I realize we have been conditioned to ensure they will all fail. Nearly every community I and my partner have tried to be a part of has either collapsed, or there has been a petty falling out of some form to the point that the effort of joining or forming another community just sounds exhausting, and what's the point? Community used to be an absolutely essential and necessary way to just survive, and also their main source of entertainment. People view the people of the American West as rugged individuals, but they actually still had and formed strong mutually reciprocal communities, which they relied on once the population got large enough. Building and being part of a community is a skill you have to ensure you put aside your disagreements, let everyone have a say, and be included. You have to be organized so that all voices and arguments are heard. You have to know how to control and prevent at least too much hierarchy, and you have to all be committed. As we shifted to a consumerist model, we became less and less reliant on community, and many just opted out of it and lost the skills needed to be a part of it. These skills continued to decline further as prepackaged emergency and entertainment for sale began to replace the need for community, and many began losing the skills and mindsets needed to deal with conflict. This led to advantages of people being freed from the need for community. It also allowed for people to have very diverse ideas and not go along as much with a crowd, creating what was dubbed the postmodern era, where everyone had access to so many ideas there was no more overarching meta-narrative that held nations or movements together. Everyone had their own tailor-made philosophy and meta-narrative. Postmodernism, or post-constructionalism, was always descriptive, never prescriptive, just like every other Marxist thought. However, with these skills, we all lost some very important skills to the point that, like phone calls, most of us have more negative connotations than positive, more stress than connective connotations associated with them. It has not only weakened our mental health, but also has weakened our ability to collectively make political change, which has led to the decline of the nation and made it impossible for us to effectively organize for rights and the planet. Many communities were able to stay together, but they require literal need for survival, while they were still often plagued by these communities' ignorant members, leading to petty fighting or a collapse. Fear of hellfire kept many religious communities going, and civil rights groups were required for their essential survival. But those unaffected by either completely dropped out. Even then, many of these communities had interactions but no connection. While the internet came along, many of us were so weird we found people like us, and we ended up finding connection without interaction. We would try our hand here or there at community until it collapsed, or there was a falling out, and became less and less invested in it, to the point that there became a natural hierarchy created just by those who actually were active in organizing things, and those who just kind of freeloaded, interested but not engaged. Once the hierarchy emerged, there became power, and power-hungry people would then be driven to do what they could to seize the power. The freeloaders viewed the community in the free market of ideas of, if you can't provide what I need, then I'll just take my business elsewhere, even though it's not an exchange of money, it's a mutual exchange of time. It brings out the worst traits in everyone and eventually dies. The survival-based communities put aside their differences. Being half-assed about anything will lead to their very survival as being under threat, so they have to be pragmatic. So to clarify, the 5 things that make a community toxic and doomed to fail are: 1. Freeloaders, or people who provide nothing or little, yet often see it as a service owed to them. They have no interest in being part of organizing or helping out where needed. They feel naturally owed this community without putting anything back in. Number 2, no inherent structure to spread out power in organizing. A freeloader is different from being a free rider. Often to recruit and decide to commit to the group, one has to be a free rider for a bit to sample things, but often the organization's structure isn't set up to transition these free riders into decision-making members. This leads to number 3, hierarchies, where a small set of people run and organize things. This creates a power structure which draws people who want power to take that power, whether they realize it or not. If hierarchies don't exist, this leads to number 4, people taking on too much and burning out. Once they decide they need to step down, the community collapses. And lastly, number 5, cliques. If communities overlap, often people from one community that already know each other will stick together. This will lead often to an othering or a lack of feeling welcome by people not in that clique, which often prevents them from moving beyond their free rider status, shifting over to freeloaders or dropping out once the need no longer exists. So how do we purposely prevent this from happening? Well, the first thing to do is make organizing and decision-making part of all functions. For specific large events, you may need a temporary hierarchy if they all have a goal, but this will not work long-term. It's not sustainable. Make sure they feel their opinions are heard. More buy-in means more people feel like they have more invested, which should drastically reduce freeloaders. Those who don't feel invested will leave if that part of the community is boring to them. There are many forms of ensuring everyone feels they are at least heard, and everyone has to be okay with compromise. Cliques are often formed directly as a side effect of a hierarchy and power structure. The less centralized power, the more people will get shifted around to different tasks, reducing the socially incestuous nature of having cliques. There are really important ways to run organizing, such as a person who runs the meeting as impartial, except for following the agreed upon rules. The more people can do this, the more they can shift around and have all their voices heard. Robert's Rules of Order is a good starting point, but can be a little too formal and scare people off. Co-housing is a community idea that has resources for democratic conflict resolution, as getting along and being able to make group decisions becomes a point of survival as well. Special events and event planning are different from community events and community planning. Special events can be defined as special things for the public to come in and enjoy without participating, while sampling your group in case they may want to join in. These can be run by a temporary appointed person, agreed to by all or the majority, but only with a lot of volunteers and support to direct. They are not the event, and when that happens, stress can burn them out like I've seen happen over and over again. Community events are frequent periodic events just by the members of the community or interested people trying the community out to create bonding and just have fun. It is best to have a short community planning meeting during these events where everyone is expected to participate so they can further plan the next community event, work on growing the community if it's too small, and put together and organize special events and then organize meetings for those involved with running the special events. Most communities I've been a part of have had both, but the weekly community events had no planning meeting. These always happened away from any event leading to power structures, isolation from the power structure, from lack of buy-in and ownership, and those power structures always either having public infighting or burnout and collapse of the entire community. This kind of buy-in and ownership also creates more bonding and a sense of belonging. It wasn't until I was probably in my 30s that I found a community I felt I belonged to, but that belonging decayed over the years, or the structure created infighting or burnout, causing that sense of belonging to die. At this point, I have no drive or energy to join any community. I have too many negative experiences, and the payoff seems not worth the effort. Just like how phone banking or door knocking are considered some of the most effective forms of campaigning, and thanks to our modern lifestyles, thanks to the fact that the majority of phone use is customer service or spam, and only sales scammers and religious annoyers use door knocking, we have a serious negative psychological aversion to doing these activities to the point of panic attacks. Neoliberalism taught us to have one of everything through marketing, to use disposable products that filled the landfills, that lead, climate change, and smoking weren't killing us. We have to figure out how to market that community is essential to your survival, just as it is believed by churches, civil rights groups, and AA. Community is essential to your health, both mental and physical, essential to our freedom, a form of insurance, essential to survive climate change, essential to be organized to change politics. Now we need to figure out how to market those to everyone, including ourselves, if we wish to survive all of this and thrive. Hence why I'm slowly learning and studying up on sustainable community, so that if I join or build a community, I can feel like it will be worth my time in the long run and won't just die like all the others. Why I made the video about what would an actual social media site look like, and have been slowly trying to figure out PHP programming and servers in hopes of adding on or modifying the decentralized social media platform Friendica to serve that function to build off of. According to the developers, I should have the skills to start learning basic fixes, but that requires me to set up a sandbox, and that has been near impossible so far as there's so so much about that I don't understand. It's a 5-year plan at this point, so I have a goal to move toward, and if it goes nowhere, I have a better experience, and hopefully I will have made friendica slightly better as someone who is a user and not necessarily a developer. In the meantime, I'm slowly studying community and collective organizing, power structures and buy-in, the healthy balance between maintaining individuality and individual self-interest, but giving up some of it for the collective, and unlearning assumptions and learning things no one ever taught us about it. Because why would we need that skill? We can just get that prepackaged at a price or go to church. Even if you never ever felt like you belonged to begin with in any of those spaces. So as always, thank you all for watching this as a video or listening to this as a podcast, which I'm sure was completely uncontroversial to anyone, especially to the YouTube monetization team. So if you found this useful, please donate to my Patreon. Just a reminder that I'm Anubis2814 on YouTube, and I have almost 700 videos on my channel that I've made over the past 11 years on religion, science, psychology, and politics. Please go check them out, and if your site has the option, like, rate, review, and comment. A special thanks goes out to Kendall Copperberg, Mylon Mia, Ogrel, Elias Garcia Guevara, and Joe Taylor for their $10 or more Wapawet level donations. I'm always humbled by the fact that they find my work worth funding and worth driving me forward. Thank you all. Please consider donating to my work if you can, and thank you all for listening.